I'm going to show you guys an example of a progression that we use in the durability code. And we have a lot of different plyometric variations that start at the lowest level so we can get just about anybody into plyometrics safely. I believe this is one of the biggest missing keys when it comes to injury reduction. So let's just take side to side hopping, for example. Unbelievable thing that you can do for your overall ankle stability, your arch strength. It can take you a long way, but not everybody can start there. So we start people at level 1, hand supported. We can go bands, we can go chairs. Shoot, I could deload 90% of my body weight. So I'm only jumping with 10% of my body weight. We start also with the back foot down as a second point of support. I can do a little double hop. So the spring tolerance isn't really high. Just about anybody can start here. Now, I have certain levels that you have to pass. If you pass that level, we move on by removing that double hop. And now I'm short ground contact side to side, but I'm still deloaded. Okay. After that, I get into my unsupported. Remove the hands, throw the chair to the side, throw the band to the side. Now I'm on my own. But I still keep that back leg down for some additional support, and I just spring side to side. Now, once you pass that, I go true unilateral. Bring that back leg off, take away the training wheels. We're going side to side at about 6 inches. And once we pass that, we just start to progress by going bigger and bigger. And then we just progress the volume. So we start to go more and more throughout that 4-week phase. There's so many different categories, from fast stretch shortening cycle to slow stretch shortening cycle to multi-direction to knee dominant versus ankle dominant. And we have progressions for every category of plyometrics. And so we can get you in safely. And most importantly, we're building that spring tolerance. This is the missing link. Everybody wants to do strength training, and the industry's been stuck for the last 10 years arguing over what's the best squat depth? What's the best lunge variation to take care of my patella tendinopathy? Well, injuries happen fast. When it comes to tendon injuries, these happen fast. This is rarely slow, long, sustained force. It's spring tolerance. Jumper's knee usually comes from jumping. Achilles tendinopathy usually comes from running, or ankle dominant plyometrics, short ground contact plyos, that kind of stuff. So if we know that tendon injuries happen fast from rapid storage and release, then how do we scale that back and train for it? Because what any good therapist, strength coach knows, what causes it is also what prevents it. And there's no such thing as full injury prevention, but we drastically reduce the risk. So think about that. What causes it is also what prevents it. So if fast storage and release causes it, then fast storage and release is what prevents it, but we have to give that to you in a really small dose. So we scale it back, we give it to you in the smallest possible dose that you can tolerate pain-free, and then we just scale it up, and we gradually get your spring tolerance so high that when you go into sporadic sports in nature involve rapid workload spikes, right? Basketball is never the same. It's always one day is really hard, and then the next day is soft, and the next day is soft, and then one day is really hard. And if our spring tolerance is high enough to where those spikes don't flare up a tendon injury because we have the capacity, we can handle this, then we don't come away with the Achilles tendinopathies and the patella tendinopathies, the jumper's knees, and those type of overuse injuries, and we drastically reduce the risk of tendon ruptures. So up until now, this is largely what the industry has focused on: slow strength training. But the truth is that in itself is not going to prevent fast injuries. And you might say, but hey, I'm not an athlete. I'm just trying to get out and run with my kids. I want to chase my kids. I want to pop out on the court and play some dummy defense. That's still fast. That's still fast ground contacts. If you're going to run, if you're going to change directions, that is spring tolerance that we need in those tendons, and you're just not going to get it from strength training. Now, strength training is still a great first start. And in the durability code, we have a full body strengthening protocol. We do tendon loading, we do isometrics, but I'm well aware that that is not the end all be all. And with fitness training and strength and conditioning, that's the direction that we've all went, is like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour lifting weights, and then I'm going to spend 10 minutes doing cardio. No plyometrics because I think it's bad for me. And then I'm going to go out and try to be springy. Whereas the parkour athlete that's dropping off buildings and doing it every day, they have a high amount of spring tolerance without this. The 10-year-old kid who's jumping off the swings and doing thousands of plyometric contacts at recess, and they go play multiple sports, they bounce back and do it the next day. They don't do a lot of slow strength training. They do a lot of fast plyometric contacts, and that builds their spring tolerance. So what builds spring tolerance? What builds impact durability? Well, scaling the impacts, scaling the spring loads that we place on the tendon. And so again, we don't want to hate on strength training, and especially in rehab scenarios when you already have a tendon problem, this is going to be the first step. The first step is removing the stuff that causes it, kicking up this, because we can get some capacity in that tendon without flaring it up. But I got to get you out of this and into these gradual plyometrics early on. This is also an area where I think people make a big mistake. They spend too long away from the spring loads because they think that they got to do this 8 to 12 week strengthening program for jumper's knee or for Achilles tendinopathy. And sure, that's an initial step, but you're assuming that plyometrics has to be intense, and so we have to stay away. But the way that we progress it in the durability code, like I said, we could decrease your body weight by 90%. So ask yourself, what causes the injuries for jumper's knee? That's usually young men, primarily. Young jumping men is what Jill Cook would say is the at-risk population. Basketball, volleyball. If you jump, you could get jumper's knee. It's very, very common. Achilles tendinopathy, common in people above 30. Not always. There's high school kids that get it. There's all ages, but above 30, if you're active, if you're running, you're more at risk for something like Achilles tendinopathy. And so you got to ask yourself, what is causing it? Because you don't see a lot of Achilles tendinopathy coming from a calf raise. You don't see a lot of jumper's knee coming from a slow, heavy squat. You see it coming from jumping, and the Achilles stuff comes from running, planting. The ruptures come from negative steps to go forward. So remember, whatever causes it is also the only thing that can truly prevent it. And so we want to get our capacity so high with that spring tolerance and do it all pain-free and gradual so that when I start playing basketball, those spikes in workload never exceed that capacity. And then I might be in season, I got a couple low days, and I got to add in more of the durability code plyos so that I make sure that I keep this high, because if I don't keep this high, even for a week, we could start to drop this rapidly, okay? So keep this really high at all times. Like kangaroos, they keep it high. They go hop every single day. Humans shouldn't be taking weeks off from elastic contacts. Spring tolerance is king. Handle these spikes to reduce the risk of tendon injuries. Let's get it.